Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in for another episode. You may or may not have seen the press release that came out from Major League Fishing yesterday afternoon. Big changes coming to the Bass Pro Tour. I can't sit here and say that any of them are positive in my opinion, but they're changes. It's a typical off season right now. Changes are occurring left and right within the tournament world. And at this point, if I sit down and look at 2024, there's not much being said about any changes occurring to it. Everyone is talking about the changes to 2025, but I do want to point out the biggest change for 2024 is that the BPT Tour is no longer paying out to every spot. They are cutting all of the dollars being handed out to 41st through 80th spots. And therefore it's become much more expensive to fish the circuit. There's $40,000 in entry fees. That doesn't include any sort of travel expenses. And then the potential now, if you come in the bottom half, to not cash a check. Last year, in the previous years, they've paid out, I believe they were paying roughly $3,700 for last spot. And if you were to come in last spot all year long, the most you could lose was roughly $13,000. That's a big difference between last year and 2024, where if you don't cash a check, you come in 41st in every tournament and come away down $40,000 in entry fees, plus whatever your expenses and travel are. So there's a major change there. I believe it's $1 million that they're taking out of the overall purse for the anglers. Concerning to me, I would like to know where that money's going. My assumption is it's going to run the business, which means the business is not doing well. That's not, I haven't seen much discussed about that, but there's major dollars being taken out of the purse. So that's the 2024 change. 2025, they're cutting the BPT field from 80 to 50 guys. Now they're doing that because they say they cannot market 80 guys, but they can market 50 to create a big atmosphere, to create superstars in the sport. I personally don't see a big difference between 80 and 50. I'm not involved in those marketing calls. I don't work with any sort of agencies to determine how many anglers there should be. So I can't answer whether that's right or wrong. From me looking on the outside in, I don't see a big difference between 50 and 80 anglers. 80 anglers is a pretty manageable number of anglers to create brands. I think a lot of that brand building shouldn't necessarily even be on the organization's plate to have to create. I think some of that falls on the angler's responsibility to create their own personal brand. So if somebody within the current field of 80 doesn't want to do anything other than fish tournaments, they should be able to do that. But if you really want to create a household name for yourself, you're probably doing more than just fishing tournaments. So a lot of that is on the anglers, but the organization in this case is taking it upon themselves to say we can only have 50 guys. The problem with that is they're going to have to cut 35 guys from next season. Out of a field of 80 guys, you're talking about almost half the field will not be returning in 2025. Now, you can look at it and say, well, how are they gonna figure it out? Well, what they've told us, and this is concerning to me as a rookie, what they've told us is they're going to take the top 35 guys from lifetime angler of the year average. So if you fished there since they began, I think there's 5 years total. You get the drop your worst year for every 3 years you fished. So after you calculate that, whoever is the top 35 in the best AOI average get invited to that top 50. That then leaves 10 spots that they're going to take the remaining anglers, whoever finished the highest in 2024. And then they're going to invite 5 invitational anglers. So that's how they're getting their 50 anglers. Now, as a rookie, the part that concerns me is where I finish next year does not dictate my AOI average. They're saying I can only have an average if I fish multiple years. So that means the only way I can qualify is to revert back to being in the top 10 out of the remaining 45 anglers. Now here's the issue I have with that. If I finish 11th in points next year, it is potentially possible to not qualify for the top 50. And the reason for that is if everyone in the top 10 next year are not in the top 35 AOY lifetime average, finishing 11th doesn't do me any good. I I think for me to have a legitimate shot, I probably have to be in the top 20 in points. I think if you look at the top 20, half of those guys will be in the top 35 AOY average, half of them will not be in the top 35 AOY average, which means those 10 out of 20 are the 10 they're going to take. To me, I feel like I'm being penalized for only fishing 1 year. If you look at my stats over the course of my career, I'm a pretty consistent angler, finishing generally inside. I mean, out of my 13 years, I've been in the top 49 of those years, I believe. The other 3 years, I was right at the 50th percentile. So if you use their formula, every 3 years I get the drop a year. That would mean I'd get the drop 4 years. My average would be a very good average. Well, in this case, because I'm only going to be a rookie next year, my 1 year does not even count in terms of an average. So I feel like that's not right. I feel like if I finish 34th in points, that's my 1 year average. I should be inside that top 35. Now, I know they can do what they want. They can change the rules if they want. Heck, I have qualified for the BPT before and had the rules changed on me that prevented me from qualifying. So this is technically the second time I've qualified for BPT. I feel like that should speak and say something as well, but it doesn't. So ultimately, guys, what I have to do next year is fish my butt off and stay in the top 10. If I'm in the top 10, that's the only way I'm guaranteed to be in the top 50 next year. Definitely not. It's not what I was hoping for. It's not great news. You know, as a rookie, you're coming in going, okay, if I can stay in, in the top, whatever that is, the top 80th percentile of the field next year, I'm good to go. And the more years you're there, the longer you can be there and the easier it is technically to get there. But the first year is the toughest year, and next year is going to be brutal. I just think we're really looking at, a tough situation for a lot of anglers. There were 80 anglers that came over to start the BPT tour, and now half of them are being kicked out. They changed the course of their career to come over and to try to grow something, and now they're not even being given that chance. And a lot of those anglers already know they probably don't even have a shot to get their career average up to the point of qualifying, which means the only way they can do it then is be in that top 10. So there's going to be some cutthroat things on the water next year, which does not excite me at all. I think there will be guys doing, moving in on people and cutting people off because they know their career is on the lines. It might make for good TV. It will not make for good friendships. And that's something that concerns me. I mean, I feel like we should have that courtesy on the water, and I think there's going to be some issues with it. I realize that if you make the top 50, assuming there is a top 50 and things don't change, that that could be a great place to be. You know, if the business can get turned around and righted and put in the right direction, maybe those top 50 anglers will truly become, very, very well positioned to thrive in the sport. We're still talking about things that aren't going to happen for another year and a half at this point. But I'm, it's not ideal. It's not ideal. I'm still looking to go out there in 2024, fish as hard as I can, and see what happens. I mean, I'm not going to change anything. I'm going to approach it the way I have. The other big change for 2024 as well is they're going back to total fish format versus your best 5 fish. So they transferred to 5 fish for a year, and they're saying now that that's not working, so we're going back to total fish. I don't know that I really have an opinion. I've fished total fish format and done just fine, and I've fished 5 fish format and done just fine. So I don't really know that I have an opinion on that, but we are making changes to that as well. Hopefully that creates better numbers and leads to better viewing numbers. It sounded like the opinion was that the 5 fish format hurt viewing numbers because it did not create the amount of excitement that you have with total weight format. And I don't, I kind of agree with that. I don't know if the numbers, how poorly the numbers were affected, but I think they said they were down 3% or something like that. and that was attributed to the fact that there were several tournaments where it was pretty much over because the 5 fish that the leader had were already far superior. The other big change too that they're making for 2024 as well is instead of the top 20 out of each 40-man bucket advancing, now it's only the top 10, which makes it a little bit harder to move on to the next round as well. So there are definitely still some structure changes happening. I've always kind of been the type that just says, tell me what the rules are, I'll abide by them and fish, to fish to fill that subset of rules. So I don't know that I personally care if it's 5 fish, multiple fish, if it's top 10 move on out of 40, top 20 move on. Those to me don't really have a huge effect on an angler's performance. I'm much more concerned generally with payout and structure and longevity in the sport, and that those have some changes as well. Anyways, guys, I've had so many emails, texts, phone calls. I just honestly, after that meeting yesterday, I kind of tuned out. I didn't want to answer any of them. I've been replying to a bunch today, but I figured I'd put the video out just so you guys could kind of get my thoughts on it, so I didn't have to respond 1,000 more times than say the same thing over and over. 2024 starts in a handful of months, and hopefully we're going to go out there and perform as well as we generally do perform, and we should be all right from that standpoint. We've just it just was made a little bit harder on us now. So anyways, guys, thanks for watching. Hopefully this fills you in on some of the things going on in my daily life. If you enjoyed today's video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Stay tuned, new video coming out tomorrow.